Chapter 1. A Life of Success. A Heart of Emptiness. Daniel Carter had everything a man could ask for. A successful corporate career, a spacious house in an upscale neighborhood, and a beautiful family. Yet, despite all the comfort, he felt an unshakable emptiness, as if his life had lost its meaning. The endless traffic, overwhelming deadlines, and back-to-back meetings drained him every day. Money bought luxury, but it did not bring the peace he desperately longed for. Moments with Emily and their children, Noah and Lily, had become increasingly rare. He left early, returned late, and often only saw his kids while they were asleep. Emily did her best to maintain harmony, but she felt the family was drifting apart. Dinners, once lively and full of laughter, had turned into quick, silent meals. Daniel found himself wondering if this was truly the future he wanted. What had happened to the dreamer he once was? During a coffee break at work, Daniel stared out the office window and saw something that made him pause. Outside, children ran around in a park, laughing without a care, while he was stuck between spreadsheets and endless calls. He felt a sharp pang of envy, not because he wanted to be a child again, but because he craved that sense of freedom. When was the last time he had felt truly alive? His routine had turned him into someone he barely recognized. On his way home, a song played on the radio, bringing back memories of his childhood. He remembered the days spent on his grandfather's farm running barefoot, picking fresh fruit, and sleeping under a sky full of stars. Something inside him stirred. Maybe what he needed wasn't more money or another promotion, but a return to his roots. The idea seemed radical, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that this was exactly what he had been searching for. Chapter 2. A conversation that changes everything. That evening, Daniel finally gathered the courage to talk to Emily. They sat on the porch, just like they used to in the early years of their marriage, and he let out everything he had been holding inside. "I don't know if this city life makes sense to me anymore," he admitted, staring at the horizon. Emily remained silent for a moment, but she didn't look surprised. Her eyes reflected understanding, as if she had been expecting this conversation. "I feel the same way," she confessed, taking his hand in hers. "I feel like we're always rushing but never really living." Her words struck Daniel deeply. He wasn't alone in this. Emily admitted that she also missed the simple things, the time with their kids, and the slower pace of life. The city, with all its opportunities, was pulling them away from what truly mattered. They talked for hours, exploring their options. The idea of moving to the countryside seemed crazy at first, but the more they discussed it, the more it made sense. Daniel shared stories of his childhood on his grandfather's farm, how those years shaped him and how much he missed that connection with nature. Emily, who had always loved the idea of a more natural lifestyle, started considering the possibility. For the first time in years, they shared a dream. By the end of their conversation, they knew this was the start of something new. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges, but their decision wasn't impulsive. It was a necessity. They would research, plan, and if it was truly viable, take the leap. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt like he was about to regain something he hadn't even realized he had lost. Chapter 3. Planning a new life. The following week, Daniel and Emily immersed themselves in researching rural life. They studied different regions, soil types, and farming options. Daniel wanted to reconnect with nature, but they also needed a way to make a living. After extensive reading and discussions, they decided that the most viable plan was growing fruits, vegetables, and herbs, selling fresh, organic produce to local markets. The perfect property appeared after weeks of searching. A small farm far from the city, with fertile land and plenty of space for cultivation. The place had been abandoned for a while, but nothing that couldn't be restored with effort and dedication. The price was fair, and with their savings, they could make the move without financial worries. It was the fresh start they had been hoping for. Noah and Lily had mixed reactions to the idea. Noah, already a teenager, hesitated, worried about leaving his friends in school. Lily, younger and more adventurous, was excited about living closer to nature. Emily reassured them that the move didn't mean losing everything, but rather gaining a new experience. They would make new friends and discover new ways to enjoy life. A simpler life didn't mean a less fulfilling one. With the decision made, the couple started preparing for their departure. The days were filled with packing, selling furniture, and emotional goodbyes. To some friends, their choice seemed extreme, but for Daniel and Emily, it was liberating. They weren't just changing homes, they were embracing a new purpose. And with every box loaded into the moving truck, the excitement grew. Chapter 4. The move to the countryside. The drive to their new home was long but filled with anticipation. Noah stared out the window, taking in the rural landscape unfolding before him. Lily counted the animals along the way, delighted by every cow, horse, and sheep she saw. Emily had a calm smile on her face, while Daniel felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. The city was fading behind them, and a new chapter in their lives was about to begin. When they arrived at the farm, they were greeted by the comforting silence of nature. The place was beautiful, but required a lot of work. The house needed repairs, the fields were overgrown, and the soil wasn't ready for planting yet. Daniel felt a moment of doubt as he realized the size of the challenge. But when he saw Emily and the kids exploring the land, he knew they had made the right choice. The first few days were tough. Noah complained about the slow internet. Lily missed her friends, and even Emily, despite her enthusiasm, realized the workload was greater than expected.
But between struggles and adjustments, they started finding their rhythm. Small moments, like outdoor dinners and the scent of fresh soil, showed them that this wasn't just an impulsive idea, it was real, and it was worth it. On their first night, Daniel sat on the porch and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. The sky was full of stars, the air was crisp, and the sense of a new beginning was undeniable. There was still so much to do, but at that moment, he knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. Chapter 5. Meeting Mr. Thomas, the local mentor. On their third morning at the farm, Daniel drove into town to buy supplies. The small general store smelled of fresh bread and aged wood, a stark contrast to the sleek, modern supermarkets he was used to. As he loaded a bag of tools into his cart, an older man approached him. He was tall, lean, with hands rough from years of labor. "New around here?" he asked with a knowing smile. Daniel extended his hand. "Yes, just moved in with my family. We bought the old farm just outside town," he explained. The man chuckled. "Ah, the Carter farm. That place has potential if you know how to work it. Name's Thomas, but folks around here call me Mr. Thomas." His eyes carried the weight of years of experience, and Daniel sensed he was someone worth listening to. Mr. Thomas wasted no time in offering his wisdom. "Farming ain't just about planting and hoping for the best," he said. "You need to understand the land, the seasons, the patience it requires." Daniel nodded, absorbing every word. The man's presence was steady, grounded, like someone who had spent a lifetime in rhythm with nature. His knowledge felt like a bridge between Daniel's inexperience and the success he hoped to achieve. Before leaving, Mr. Thomas handed Daniel a notebook filled with handwritten tips. "My way of welcoming you," he said. "If you ever need advice, you know where to find me." As Daniel drove back to the farm, he felt something he hadn't in years, a sense of belonging, of stepping into a world where he could learn, grow, and redefine himself. Chapter 6. Choosing their path. The birth of a farm. That evening, Daniel and Emily sat at the kitchen table, reviewing everything they had learned. "So, we need to decide what exactly we're going to grow," Emily said, flipping through pages of research. They had options: livestock, grains, or even flowers, but the idea of growing fruits, vegetables, and herbs seemed both practical and rewarding. It's something we can manage as a family, Daniel said. Emily's business instincts kicked in. If we do this right, we could supply fresh produce to local restaurants and markets, she noted.
People are willing to pay for organic, locally grown food. Daniel liked the sound of it. Unlike the wine business he had originally considered, this venture would allow them to see results sooner, create something sustainable, and still feel deeply connected to the land. While Daniel focused on the crops, Emily found herself drawn to the idea of growing herbs, not for profit, but as a personal passion. "It'll be my little corner of the farm," she said with a smile. Noah and Lily listened to their parents' discussion with curiosity. "Can I have my own section too?" Lily asked. "Maybe strawberries?" Emily laughed. "I think that's a great idea." With a plan in place, they marked the fields, studied soil conditions, and made a list of what they would plant first. The next morning, Daniel and Noah began tilling the land while Emily and Lily prepared seed beds for herbs and smaller crops. As Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead, he looked around at his family working together and felt something shift inside him. For the first time, this didn't feel like an experiment, it felt like home. Chapter 7. The first challenges of farm life. The first few weeks on the farm tested Daniel's patience and endurance. Used to working in an office, he underestimated the physical demands of farm work. His hands, once accustomed to typing on a keyboard, were now covered in blisters from digging and planting. The sun beat down on him as he struggled to clear weeds and prepare the soil. Every night, he collapsed into bed, exhausted, wondering if he had made a mistake. Emily, on the other hand, adapted more quickly. While she wasn't involved in the heavy labor, she took charge of the farm's finances and planning. She spent her mornings researching best practices for growing fruits, vegetables, and herbs, ensuring their efforts were efficient. She also started a small herb garden as a personal project, which soon became her way of unwinding after a long day. Unlike Daniel, she found peace in the transition. The children faced their own struggles. Noah, used to city life, complained about the lack of entertainment and reliable internet. He missed his friends and spent most of his time in his room. Lily, while excited about nature, quickly realized that farm life wasn't just about playing with animals. It involved chores and responsibilities. Still, she adapted faster, helping Emily with the garden and learning to enjoy the little things. As the days passed, they all began to settle into their new reality. The mornings started early, the work was tough, but there was satisfaction in every small victory. Daniel slowly improved his farming techniques. Emily found a balance between work and family, and even Noah started taking small walks around the property, observing the land they now called home. The challenge was real, but so was the reward. Chapter 8. Finding strength in simplicity. Over time, the family started embracing the simplicity of their new life. Meals became an event, with fresh ingredients from their garden making every dish richer. Emily and Lily spent afternoons experimenting with new recipes, while Daniel and Noah took on the responsibility of maintaining the fields. The work was endless, but each task felt meaningful in a way that corporate deadlines never had. Evenings became their favorite part of the day. Instead of screens and emails, they gathered on the porch, watching the sunset over the fields. Daniel, once a man of schedules and productivity, learned to appreciate stillness, the sound of crickets, the sight of fireflies, and the laughter of his children. The rush of city life no longer seemed appealing. Here, time felt like a gift rather than an enemy. Despite their progress, there were setbacks. A storm destroyed part of their first batch of crops, leaving Daniel frustrated and demotivated. It was Mr. Thomas who reminded him that failure was part of farming and of life. The land teaches patience, Daniel. You don't control it, you learn to work with it, he said. Those words stuck with Daniel, helping him shift his mindset from frustration to resilience. Slowly, their efforts began to pay off. The farm started to show promise. Rows of vegetables sprouted. The fruit trees grew stronger, and Emily's herbs flourished. The children, once hesitant, became more involved. Noah, to everyone's surprise, developed an interest in photographing the farm's progress, capturing the beauty in each changing season. Without realizing it, they were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. Chapter 9. A lesson from the land. Daniel's connection with Mr. Thomas deepened as he learned more about farming. The older man, having worked the land for decades, had a way of seeing life's lessons through nature's rhythm. One evening, after a long day of work, he and Daniel sat under the shade of a large tree. You see this farm? It'll never be perfect. Some years will be good, others will be hard. But that's life, isn't it? Thomas said, his voice calm. Daniel reflected on those words. He had spent years chasing perfection, higher salaries, bigger houses, the illusion of control. But here, under the open sky, he realized perfection didn't exist. What mattered was the process, the care he put into his land and his family. Farming, like life, was about adapting, learning, and moving forward, no matter the setbacks. One evening, Emily found Daniel sitting quietly by their crops, lost in thought. "What's on your mind?" she asked, sitting beside him. He smiled, glancing at their small but growing farm. "I think I finally get it," he said. "We're not here to control this place. We're here to grow with it." Emily squeezed his hand, understanding exactly what he meant. They had spent so long trying to fix their lives now. They were finally living them. The lessons didn't stop with Daniel. Noah, still struggling with the transition, found himself drawn to the old camera he had brought from the city. One afternoon, he showed his parents a picture he had taken, a close-up of a single sprouting plant. "It's small now, but it's growing just like us," he said with a shy smile. Daniel and Emily exchanged a knowing look. Their son had unknowingly captured the very essence of their journey. Chapter 10. A growing business. A growing family bond. Months passed, and the farm became more than just a home. It became a source of livelihood. Daniel and Emily's produce was fresh, organic, and gaining attention at the local market. Emily, using her business expertise, designed a small brand for their farm, creating social media pages to attract nearby customers. Orders started to come in, and soon they were supplying local shops and restaurants. Their biggest surprise came when a local farmers market invited them to sell their products directly to the community. It was a milestone, a chance to show that their decision to move hadn't just been about escaping the city, but about building something meaningful. They set up a simple stall, offering fresh fruits, vegetables, and Emily's carefully curated herbs. The response was overwhelmingly positive. At the market, they met other farmers, learning from those who had been doing this for generations. Noah, initially uninterested, started documenting the experience, turning their journey into a photo series that gained popularity online. Lily, always full of energy, became the best salesperson, charming customers with her enthusiasm. They were no longer just a family adjusting to farm life, they were part of a community. That evening, as they packed up after a successful day, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years. Pride. Not just in what they had built, but in who they had become. He looked at Emily, who was already planning their next steps, at Noah, who was excitedly reviewing his photos, and at Lily, who was still buzzing with excitement. For the first time in a long time, he felt completely, undeniably fulfilled. Chapter 11. An unexpected offer from the city. Just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected call shook Daniel's newfound peace. An old colleague from his corporate days reached out with a tempting job offer, a high-paying position in a prestigious firm, promising financial security and the kind of professional success he once dreamed of. The offer was generous, and for a moment the old ambition stirred within him. That evening he shared the news with Emily. She listened carefully, sensing the conflict in his voice. "Do you miss that life?" she asked gently. Daniel hesitated. Did he? The idea of returning to the city, the fast-paced world, the prestige, it was tempting. But when he looked around, saw his children laughing, the sunset over their farm, and the life they had built, he wasn't so sure anymore. Noah and Lily, overhearing the conversation, reacted in different ways. Noah, still attached to his old life in the city, seemed hopeful. "So, does this mean we might go back?" he asked. Lily, on the other hand, frowned. "But what about the farm? And Mr. Thomas?" Daniel realized that this wasn't just about him. Their choice had affected the whole family, and they had all changed because of it. That night, Daniel sat outside, staring at the sky. A year ago, he would have accepted the offer without hesitation. But now, he felt something deeper pulling him. The peace, the connection, the purpose he had found in this land. Could he really walk away from it? Or was this moment just another test, asking him to define what success truly meant? Chapter 12. A moment of reflection. The following days were filled with introspection. Emily noticed Daniel's quietness and knew he was weighing the decision carefully. One afternoon, she sat with him under the same tree where Mr. Thomas often gave his wisdom. "You don't have to decide right away," she said. "But whatever you choose, make sure it's for the right reasons." Daniel spent time walking through the fields, observing the small but meaningful progress they had made. The trees were growing, the vegetables were thriving, and the once barren land was now full of life. He thought about the early struggles, the lessons from Mr. Thomas, and the way his children had adapted. Was he really willing to trade all this for a corporate office and a paycheck? One afternoon, Mr. Thomas found him sitting by the crops, deep in thought. "Something on your mind, son?" the old man asked. Daniel hesitated before explaining the situation. Mr. Thomas chuckled. "You already know the answer, don't you? You just need to say it out loud." He was right deep down. Daniel already knew where he belonged. He just had to let go of the last piece of doubt. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Daniel looked at each of them, their hands marked by work, their smiles lighter than before, their bond stronger than ever. It was in that moment that he finally spoke. "I'm staying," he said simply. Emily smiled knowingly. Noah nodded thoughtfully, and Lily cheered. The decision had never really been about money or status. It had always been about happiness. Chapter 13. Choosing what truly matters. Turning down the offer wasn't just a choice. It was a statement. It meant committing fully to the life they had built, to the farm, and to the values they had rediscovered. Daniel sent his polite decline to the corporate firm, feeling an unexpected relief instead of regret. The life they had now wasn't always easy, but it was real, and it was theirs. With renewed energy, the family threw themselves into their work. Daniel improved his farming techniques, Noah took his photography more seriously, and Emily expanded their business outreach, securing larger buyers for their produce. The farm wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Thomas, watching from a distance, nodded approvingly. Daniel had finally become a true farmer. They started making plans for the next season, expanding their fields and considering new crops. The local market began recognizing their brand. and they gained loyal customers who valued their fresh, organic produce. It was a slow but steady growth, built with patience and love. Success, they realized, wasn't measured in paychecks or promotions. It was measured in the life they created. One day, Noah surprised them with a short film he had made, documenting their journey. He had captured the struggles, the triumphs, and the small, beautiful moments in between. Watching it, Daniel and Emily realized something. This wasn't just a farm. It was a legacy. Chapter 14. The first real harvest. A full year had passed since they arrived, and the day of the first major harvest finally came. The fruit trees were full, the herbs were fragrant, and the vegetables were ripe. The entire family, along with Mr. Thomas, worked side by side, collecting the fruits of their labor both literally and figuratively. It was a celebration of resilience, patience, and growth. To mark the occasion, Emily suggested hosting a small gathering with the community, inviting locals who had supported them. Farmers, neighbors, and new friends came together to share food, laughter, and stories. Daniel stood in the middle of it all, watching the connections they had built, realizing this was more than just a harvest. It was proof that they had made the right choice. Noah set up a photo display of the farm's progress, showing images from their first days to the thriving land it had become. People were amazed at the transformation, not just of the land, but of the family itself. "You didn't just grow crops," one neighbor said. "You grew into the people you were meant to be." The words stuck with Daniel. This journey had changed them all. That night, as they sat under the stars, exhausted but fulfilled, Daniel looked at his family. They weren't running on autopilot anymore. They weren't counting down days to the next paycheck or waiting for weekends to feel alive. They had built something meaningful, something lasting, and that was worth more than any city job could ever offer. Chapter 15. A life rebuilt. A family reconnected. Sitting on the porch with Emily, Daniel let out a deep sigh of contentment. The farm, once an uncertain dream, was now their reality. Their days were still busy, but every effort felt like it mattered. The rush of the city had been replaced by the rhythm of the seasons, and they had never felt more in sync with life. Noah, who had once resented the move, now talked about starting a photography blog, sharing their story with the world. Lily, barefoot and carefree, was already making plans for what she wanted to plant next. Emily, once a city woman, had become the heart of the farm's business, balancing sustainability with creativity. Each of them had found a place in this life, and it fit perfectly. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the crisp night air. He thought back to the man he used to be, the man who chased status, believed success was about money, and felt lost in a life that no longer made sense. That man was gone. In his place stood someone who had built something real, something worth waking up for every day. As the crickets sang and the stars shone above them, Emily leaned into him and whispered, "Are you happy?" Daniel smiled, looking out at the land they had made their own. "More than I ever thought possible," he replied. And he meant every single word.